Welcome to my leadership series. I'm negotiation and leadership strategist Elizabeth Suarez. My goal is to help you enhance your skills to establish a more profitable, inclusive, and productive workplace. Throughout this series, I will be talking to industry leaders and delving into their managerial styles. In today's video, I'm spotlighting Chris Burke. He is the VP of Transmission Operations with Entergy Corporation, which happens to be a Fortune 500 energy company. Welcome, Chris, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Good to be here.
Likewise. So let's go ahead and start very quickly. I want the audience to get a better understanding of who you are. So can you share with everybody, where were you born and raised, and what school did you go to, and actually what did you study?
I am born and raised in Des Moines, Iowa. So I always tell everybody I'm kind of like a farm boy. We didn't. I worked on farms when I was growing up. We lived in the city, but in Iowa, you're never really far from, the country. So I kind of tease people and say, hey, I'm a farm boy from Iowa, even though I'm a city boy from Iowa. So I grew up, that's my family home. My sister and her family still live there. And I went to college after graduating from high school in Des Moines, went to the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland, and studied engineering. And, my goal for going to the academy was originally I was and grew up wanting to be an astronaut and be into aviation. And then when I was going through the application process and the selection process for the Naval Academy, found out that my eyes were not, well, I knew my eyes weren't 20/20, but I didn't know it was going to prevent me from being a pilot. So I started to think about other career options other than aviation. And, the Navy had this thing called nuclear power, and it was engineering related. It was, at the time, it seemed like it was very high tech, and it was something that caught my interest. And I went to the Naval Academy with the goal of being selected for the propulsion program. And that did happen. I graduated after 4 years and then went to the nuclear power program, which is essentially a year-long curriculum in reactor physics and reactor plant operations that the Navy sends all of its officers and sailors to, who are going into that program, where you learn the theory of operations and the practicality of operation of nuclear power plants when you get to those nuclear powered ships. Went through that program and then went into my ship. I was based in the San Francisco area, served on nuclear power cruisers for about the next 4 years, and then finished my tour of duty there and went to the Pentagon, where I was on the joint staff, the joint chiefs of staff. I was a staff officer there, and did that for a couple of years. And then that's when I decided I was going to leave active duty service and go back to grad school. So I went to University of Virginia, which is just a couple hours down the road from the Washington, D.C. area, and studied, did a joint degree, got my law degree, got my MBA, and then went into management consulting shortly thereafter, right after graduation. Fascinated by business at that point, but not just business as a concept, but business in different industry sectors, and something I was able to gain in a short period of time through management consulting by working on different client engagements in different industries, learn the cost drivers, the business drivers for a wide variety of industry sectors in a relatively short period of time. With that being said, I always still had, from my nuclear power days in the Navy, I always had an interest in electric power. And so I knew in the back of my head that when an opportunity presented itself, or the right opportunity presented itself, that I would want to go into that field. And it just so happened that, in 2003, I got a call from a recruiter about an opportunity to manage a power plant in Ottumwa, Iowa, of all places, which was, right down the road from where I grew up. And that's when I entered into the power industry. I was a plant manager for a couple of years, and then moved into a finance role with the same company, and then an energy market operations role. So I was there for about 6.5 years. And then I left to go to Colorado, which is where you and I had met previously. And so that's pretty much, and I was there in Colorado for 7 years. And now I'm in the southeast part of the country that I'd never lived in before. Spent a couple years in the Houston area. Now I'm in the Jackson, Mississippi area. So it's been a whirlwind. I'm either going to run out of states or I'm going to run out of time. I don't know which one is going to come first.
Yeah, it's impressive, your background. I've always been impressed by your background. So with all this experience you have, not only academically, but also from not political, but government, as well as in the Fortune 500 companies, how would you define leadership?
If you took 10 people and put them in a room and asked them what their definition of leadership is or was, you'd probably get 10 different answers. Mm-hmm. But for me, I try to keep it simple. And leadership to me is the ability to effectively lever all the resources at one's disposal towards the accomplishment of objectives. Mm-hmm. And those could be business objectives, those could be personal objectives, they could be professional, they could be charitable. It doesn't really matter because the concepts are still the same, but it's essentially the ability to effectively lever the resources at your disposal to get things done.
What are the core principles that are guiding you right now as a leader?
What it comes down for me are 4 things. Mm-hmm. First one is, and they're interrelated to a certain extent, but I'll talk about them in a particular order. The first one is people. Mm-hmm. Leadership means nothing without considering the impact and the contributions of the people that you're privileged to work with. So that's first and foremost, is everything that you do has either needs people or has an impact on people or both. So that's the number one aspect of leadership from my perspective. And the other 3 are ones that deal with the effective interaction and utilization of people towards accomplishing those objectives that I mentioned a few moments ago. Mm-hmm. And the first one is the effective use. It's really the balancing of 3 things: the balancing of authority, accountability, and responsibility. Mm-hmm. And the effective leaders, one thing I learned at the Naval Academy early on, it's something that I've used everywhere I've been, is that effective leadership requires the balancing of those 3 elements: authority, mm-hmm. which is the tools, the power, the resources you have at your disposal to get things done. Responsibility is that internal holding to account that you apply to yourself. That sense of responsibility is that voice that you hear at 2:00 in the morning reminding you to get something done that you may have forgotten. Mm-hmm. And then accountability, which is an external holding to account, someone outside you or some entity outside you setting the expectations for what you're required. If you can keep those 3 in balance, then you've got the makings of an effective leadership relationship and an effective leadership experience.
I like how you looked at authority and the accountability and the responsibility. So let me ask you, where does inclusive leadership comes into effect there? Because this is what has been happening in the past year or so. A lot of talk about inclusion and leadership. So where does that come in when you're looking at the way that you define leadership?
inclusivity is something that is a big part of, and it's a welcome addition to the things that we're being asked to consider as leaders in the business context. And inclusivity relates to being able to optimize the impact of everyone on your team. And when I look at inclusivity, I look at the ability of a team to be able to get from everyone on the team the maximum contribution that each individual is able to make in a way that optimizes the whole. So we'll talk about those people, the people resources, and the ability to effectively lever their contributions. That doesn't happen in a way that's going to be optimal unless inclusivity is part of the mix and it's part of the consideration.
What, in your opinion, has been your biggest challenge in the past year when it comes to leading your organization from an inclusive lens? What has been the biggest challenge?
Yeah, I would say that, and it's the biggest challenge over the past year from my perspective, has been, and to a certain extent continues to be, that in this new way of working, where we're dealing with the health risks to our employees as a result of the global pandemic, the biggest challenge has been, how do you maintain that degree of connectedness, that connective tissue that binds employees and team members together in a way that optimizes the work product that we're trying to achieve and our progress towards our goals? Because I'll tell you, when we first started working from home, I have a 24, part of my team, as I mentioned before, is a 24/7 operation. So those folks have to be in the control center. They have to be there. And the biggest risk that we had at that time was that if a COVID positive incident was spreading through our organization, and then forcing us to make some pretty difficult decisions. So we had to go above and beyond to make sure that we were very cautious and just really sticklers about the COVID protocols.
Post-pandemic, Chris, what do you see as some key opportunities for the lie ahead for businesses like yours?
We're in the business of providing an essential service to our customers. During the pandemic, we had 5 named hurricanes that we had to battle just last fall. We had a week in February, right after Valentine's Day, where we had the winter storm that hit across the entire eastern seaboard and really had a devastating impact on this part of the country, and a lot of our customers included. So our work has continued, and our responsibility is to ensure that people still get their power and are able to use it to enhance their lives, irrespective of what else is going on. We didn't get a pass just because there's a global pandemic and you no longer have to supply power in the way that you always have. In fact, I think that the expectations even went higher because you had more people who were working at home. You had more people working in ways that required electronic means of communication. So the need and dependence on power was even greater than it ever has been before. And so from that standpoint, what's going to happen as we come out of this pandemic? First of all, we're looking forward to people being reconnected to, the social events, the things that make life worth living, and being able to visit and commune with family and friends. And, you know, by the way, you know, all those activities, those events, those are all things that consume power. So our business is still going to go on in a way that's similar, not too different from the way that it was before. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, we'll be able to kind of reignite those connected relationships, not only in our own team, but to be able to see that happening across our customer base and again, indeed across our region and across our nation as well. Mm-hmm. So for us, it's going to be business as usual plus.
What advice would you give to a younger you?
Yeah, I came through an engineering background. I came up through engineering roles. And, you know, when I was young, I thought that the engineering and the science and the math, that those were the only things that drove the outcomes as far as, you know, whether you were going to be successful or not. That's all I was interested in, were the technical aspects of the job. I've learned over the years that the technical aspects are important tools, they're important resources, but the things that really, really, really make the difference about whether you're going to be successful as an individual or whether you're going to be successful as a team or whether you're going to be successful as a company depend on the people and the ability to effectively lever, the ability to effectively liaise with, to form those relationships where there's an open and honest and trusting level of communications that exists between members of the team, and where people feel, to your point of inclusivity a few moments ago, where people feel comfortable in giving their best with an understanding that it's not going to be for naught and it's going to be appreciated, and that appreciation will be visible and shown.
Thank you, Chris, for your time. I know you're extremely busy. I know this energy industry is extremely complicated and very much moving this country forward as well as the world. So I appreciate your time. So also want to thank for everybody that has been watching and listening. And I welcome any feedback and comment below if you want to continue the conversation with me or with Chris. And I will see you during the next video.